There's a kind of moment most people don't notice right away. Nothing dramatic happens. No big confession. No clear turning point. But you sense it. Someone starts paying attention to you differently. They linger a little longer in conversation. They remember small details you didn't think mattered. They seem affected by things you say that felt ordinary to you. And if you've lived long enough, you've probably noticed something else. These moments don't always happen when you're confident or impressive. They don't require charm or effort. Sometimes they happen when you're calm, sometimes when you're honest, sometimes when you're simply present and not trying to be anything at all. That's usually when the question comes up later. Why did that land so deeply for them? Most of us grow up believing love is about chemistry, personality, attraction, timing, and yes, those things play a role. But they don't explain the connections that feel stronger than the situation itself. They don't explain why someone can feel drawn to you even when you haven't done anything special. There's an older psychological idea, often associated with Carl Jung, that offers a more grounded explanation. People are often drawn to you not because of who you are on the surface, but because of what you represent to them internally. All of us carry parts of ourselves that never fully developed. Traits we admired but didn't feel allowed to express. Emotions we learned to manage instead of understand. Ways of being that didn't fit our family, our culture, or the role we were expected to play. Those parts don't disappear. They stay quiet in the background, shaping what feels meaningful later in life. So when someone meets a person who naturally lives one of those missing qualities, something clicks. Not excitement at first. Relief. You might represent calm to someone who has lived in constant reaction. You might represent emotional steadiness to someone who grew up around chaos. You might represent decisiveness to someone who has spent their life deferring. They don't always know what they're responding to. They just know that being around you feels different. That's often the first reason people fall in love with you. You are living something they never learned how to live themselves. This is where things can quietly shift without anyone noticing. Admiration can slowly turn into reliance. Instead of learning from what you embody, the other person begins to lean on you to carry it for them. They feel better when you're present, unsettled when you pull away, unsure when you don't show up the way they expect. Nothing is said outright. No demands are made. But over time, there's a subtle imbalance. One person starts feeling responsible for the emotional tone of the relationship. The other starts feeling incomplete without it. That's when love begins to feel heavy, even though no one did anything wrong. There's another layer that complicates this even more. Over time, we all form internal images of connection. They aren't fantasies, exactly, and they aren't conscious plans. They're shaped by early relationships, longings that went unanswered, emotional needs that never found language. When someone enters our life who resonates with that internal image, the reaction can be immediate. The connection feels familiar before it feels logical, comfortable before it feels earned. This is why people sometimes say, "I don't know why, but it feels like I've known them forever." What they're recognizing isn't the person in front of them. It's a pattern inside themselves finally finding a match. This is also why familiarity is often mistaken for safety. When a connection mirrors something unresolved, it feels intense, meaningful, important, and because it feels familiar, it can feel right, even when it isn't stable. People confuse repetition with destiny, intensity with depth, recognition with compatibility. And when that internal image is placed onto a real person, expectations quietly form, not spoken, but felt. The problem is that images don't age, don't get tired, don't contradict themselves. People do. So when real life shows up, disagreements, limitations, ordinary flaws, the illusion begins to crack. Confusion follows. Disappointment sets in. Both people feel hurt, often without understanding why. The relationship didn't fail. The projection did. This explains why some relationships begin with intensity and end abruptly. They weren't built on mutual understanding. They were built on unconscious need. And when that need shifts, or when the image can no longer be sustained, the connection loses its grip. These relationships aren't meaningless. In fact, they often serve a very specific purpose. They reveal patterns. Same emotional dynamic, different person, different story, same ending, different face, familiar feeling. Many people think they're unlucky in love, when in reality they're consistent. The unconscious keeps presenting the same lesson until it's recognized. Love, in this sense, isn't always meant to last. Sometimes it's meant to interrupt, to show us what we keep asking others to resolve for us, to expose what we haven't yet integrated within ourselves. Every intense connection carries information. The problem isn't falling in love. The problem is never asking what it's trying to teach. With awareness, something changes. You start noticing when attraction is rooted in lack rather than compatibility. You recognize when familiarity feels comforting but isn't grounding. You stop expecting another person to embody what you haven't yet developed yourself. Love becomes quieter, less dramatic, more realistic. Not empty, not dull, just honest. So if someone has ever fallen deeply in love with you, or if you've felt that powerful pull toward another person, pause before explaining it away. Ask what might be happening underneath. What quality is being mirrored? What part of the self is being invited forward? Because often, love isn't about finding someone to complete us. It's about encountering the parts of ourselves we've been neglecting. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this reflection connects with your own experiences, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Many of us carry similar patterns, even if they look different on the surface. And if you find value in these conversations about life, relationships, and the inner world, I'm grateful you're here. Sometimes understanding doesn't arrive as a breakthrough. Sometimes it arrives quietly, the way real change usually does.